Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Adolfo, and I hope you legends are having an amazing day. Today, I'm going to talk about my first and only manic episode. More specifically, what it feels like to be in a manic state and how friends and family around me generally reacted to me in this manic state. There's a lot of things I learned with having bipolar type 1 in the short amount of time I've been diagnosed, a little over a year. And one of the first lessons I've learned with having bipolar type 1 with psychotic features is that it only takes one manic episode to completely carpet bomb the circumstances of your life. That's exactly what happened with me. And there are certain elements of a manic episode, the way you feel, the way you act, that stand out. And the three things that most stood out in my manic episode were accelerated speech and thought, fear and suspense, and an augmented sense of grandiosity, of feeling superior and better than everyone at everything that there ever was. The first thing, speech and thought, and I've read many stories of other people's bipolar experiences, and this seems to be shared across many, is you talk so incredibly fast. Like, think about Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Supersonic, times a million. You sound like an auctioneer. I would talk so fast. And part of it is because my thoughts would be so fast. I always knew what the next 10 things I were going to say was. I would be talking so fast that no matter the circumstance, and mind you, I'm living in a frat house in college. I was at this particular moment. Nobody could ever get a word in with me, and these are other college students. You know, my family on the phone and the few times I saw them in person, they could not get a word in with me because of how fast I was talking. And I wouldn't describe it as like a feeling a need to rush, but it's like a different type of urgency. It's kind of like an urgency of mind where your speech has to match how fast you're thinking. You have to get it out immediately. You have to demonstrate how smart you are. You just have to do it, right? That's one element that happened in my case. And as you can imagine, having all these thoughts and having them constantly occupy your mind and feeling the need to say this and do this, I took on so many different projects as a result of all these thoughts. My sleep was greatly disturbed. There was one point in my semester where I was literally awake for 5 days, and that is not an exaggeration. I was literally awake for 5 days at one point. And I imagine that only helped exacerbate the symptoms of my manic state as well. And this was accompanied by a great deal of fear and suspense of everything around me. One of the fears that I developed strangely was a general fear of communists and Nazis, where I would get this individual suspicion of certain people and like, oh, this one might be a communist. You know, this, my best friend for the past year and a half of college, he might be in on this conspiracy, or he's a member of the, Communist Party of China, and he's going to intervene in this aspect of my life and do this to me. Like, these were literal thoughts that were going on in my mind. And I consider myself to be an incredibly intelligent person, but in these moments, I wasn't thinking. That wasn't me thinking, or those things. It wasn't me thinking that the guy across the street might be a Nazi because of the way he looked at me, as opposed to a guy who just glanced over and saw me and didn't even look at me. It's just unfortunate the way that happens, and you see it everywhere. Like, I would see connections in patterns and everything. I would turn on the television and then make a connection between a line said by a news anchor with a tweet that I saw online, and make a connection between those two things and something said in a YouTube video. There were just connections and patterns and everything with letters and numbers and words and images, and my mind was constantly in that state, and it was very overwhelming. It's no easy way to really put it. And those suspicions, they eat away at you, right? When you're in that fear of constantly being in fear for your life, it almost feels like you're in a war zone in a sense, right? And I have not personally been in war, but I can imagine what it might possibly be like based on experiences I've read and seen. And that's how I would describe it. Like your life is constantly at risk at every single moment. And as if those two aspects of my manic state weren't bad enough, it was made even worse by the fact that I also had this massive sense of self-importance where I had a larger place in the world than I actually did. In reality, I was a college student a couple semesters away from graduation. Not anymore. Sad story for a different day. I, in my mind, at one point, was the return of God. That I was like God's chosen one, a prophet, here to speak truth. That I was smarter than everybody. That all the problems in the world, I knew all the solutions. I knew the exact causes. I knew what needed to be done to prevent them. I knew how to make sure nothing like this would happen again. And I knew how to get people to believe me. Except none of those things were true. But in my mind, they were true. In here, they were true. And that's the astonishing thing with bipolar disorder, is that how can you judge someone for thinking something is real if they have a disorder that makes them not believe it's real but know it's real? I did not just think that, I knew it. My mind thought it, but my heart knew it too. And that's the thing with bipolar disorder. And it was not just over there. Probably the most dangerous part of my disorder is that at some point during my episode, I became under the belief that we were living in a simulated reality, and that anything and everything we do is like part of a system, a systematic process being managed by some higher being, and that we have zero control over it. And you can imagine the defeat that you would feel over this, the gloom that would consume you. And that's exactly what happened with me. And in those moments, I became very suicidal and did not feel very highly about myself at all. And I was hospitalized at one point for that. I was arrested a few months later as a result of that. So bipolar disorder, manic episodes are dangerous. They can destroy your life quickly. If you just, go over the things that I just talked about, think about the social relationships you can damage with accelerated speech and thought, which you don't have so much control over. Think about the harm you can cause to yourself or others if you have a constant fear and suspense of everyone around you. Think about the situations you can get yourself into and that you might not be able to get yourself out of if you have a superior sense of grandiosity and think the world revolves around you. These are all dangerous aspects of mania that affect many, not just me. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And that's just my experience of what mania is, what it feels like. It's terrifying. It's sad. There were times that I cried. There were times that I was furious and angry. Lots of times that I was aggravated, felt like I wasn't appreciated, that I wasn't good enough for anything. And nobody should have to experience this, but unfortunately there's lots of people who do. Many people with bipolar who have this condition, and for those who have it, I hope my story resonates with you. For those who don't, I hope it gives some insight into how it's like. But thank you all for watching. I'll be making more content on bipolar disorder in the future, for sure. If you have any suggestions, leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have an excellent day, you absolute legends.